Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a guide and demonstration on how to specifically polish or correct the paint on a car door. Now the reason for this video is that quite a few of you guys have commented in the past that you're sick and tired of always seeing paint correction demonstrations done on car bonnets and would like to see how I go about correcting the paint on a car door. So today I'm going to be showing my method and breakdown of how I approach a car door to remove the existing defects and restore gloss and clarity to the paint. And although I will be briefly discussing the products I'm using, such as my compounds, pads and machines, and I'll also be touching on technique, this video will more so be focusing on the specific method I use to polish a car door. So if you do want more information on how to prepare the car's paint for correction, and how to do a test section to discover which compound polish and pad you should be using on your particular paint and its existing defects, I'll link my video, A Guide to Restoring Car Paint, to the end screen of this video, which is a great guide to answer all those questions and set you off on the right path before you get to this stage. The first step is to mask any plastic or rubber trims, as you don't want to cause any damage or stain them with the compounds and pads. I'll also be masking the opposing front fender panel, as I want to protect that vulnerable edge while I'm polishing. And I'll actually be using a microfiber cloth to prop the door open on the other side so that I don't need to mask that or worry about the rear door's edge panel.
There she goes again. She pretends she's happy when she's hanging with him, but inside she cries. Don't know how much longer she could keep up the lies.
I've tried to keep things as simple as possible for this video by using a large 5-inch polisher to correct the paint in the larger, flatter areas of the car door, and a mini 3-inch polisher to correct the paint in the smaller areas and edges of the door. And I'm using them with 2 foam pads and 2 compounds. The first pad and compound will be the cutting stage, to level down and remove the majority of the existing defects, and the second pad and polish will be used to restore gloss and clarity to the paint. Apart from that, I have my panel wipe to assist me in removing the polishing oils, microfiber cloths and my all-important inspection light to adequately judge my work and process. And I'll have all these products listed in the description box. Now just before we get started, I want to explain the reason why I'm using larger and smaller pads and machines. The smaller pads have 2 advantages. Firstly, they're able to get closer into intricate areas, allowing for higher levels of paint correction and results. And secondly, because smaller pads are less aggressive, they're much safer around vulnerable panel edges, meaning that less clear coat is removed while also achieving superior results. However, when it comes to the larger and flatter panel areas, larger polishing pads are just far more effective and efficient to work with. And although you can certainly use a single machine to polish a whole car, it's really the combination of using both larger and smaller pads that allow you to achieve superior results with a lot less risk. And the only trade-off is that it does take more time. So let's get started with the first cutting stage, and also starting with the edge work. In general, I'll start with 3 drops of compound on my pad and then drop down to 2 drops after the pad is primed. A great rule of thumb when deciding how large your work area should be is 6 times the size of your pad. So when working with larger pads, you can successfully work larger areas, but with smaller pads you should reduce the size of your work area accordingly. Now every paint, compound, pad and machine is different, but once again a great general working method is to use just moderate pressure, a slow arm movement and about 3 to 4 passes of your pad within your work section. And your goal during the edge work stage is to position the mini polisher right into those panel curves, crevices and edges, purely focusing on removing the defects in those intricate areas rather than concerning yourself with the defects in the flatter and larger areas at this stage. Once I've completed a set of passes in my section, I'll use my microfiber cloth to collect the compound, and then I'll spray my panel wipe to further aid in removing any polishing oils so that I can truly assess my results. Now, if my compound and pad selection together with my technique is on point, then the results should be good, but I'll be continuously checking them with my light to make sure. And as this is the first cutting stage, it's completely normal to have some haze and micro marring in the finish, which I'll be addressing in the second polishing stage. So at this point, all I'm really concerned with is removing the existing defects, and I'll be refining the finish in the second stage. So being that I'm happy with the results in this first section, all I really have to do now is stay consistent with my technique and repeat this same process around all the edges of the car door. And as you'll see, if I stay within that 6 times my pad size working area, I'll have about 7 or 8 sections on the car door during this edge work stage. And one thing I can add, based on my experience teaching detailed classes, is that consistency is perhaps the greatest challenge that people face. So you may want to try speeding up things by working larger sections or adding more compound to your pads and using more pressure and so on. But in most cases, it's just going to degrade your results and lead to a poorer finish. So consistency is where most people succeed or fail during the paint correction process, and it's really something you need to focus on during this whole stage. Door handle wells can be one of the most scratched up and tricky areas to polish or correct on a car door. Now, I do have a selection of smaller 2-inch, 1-inch, half-inch and even quarter-inch machines and pads to help address these super tight areas. But as I mentioned earlier, I did want to keep this video a little more simple, as I realise that most people won't have these machines. So I'm going to show how you can successfully polish door handle wells by hand. I'm using a 1-inch microfiber pad with the same compound to polish it by hand, but you can also use the end of a microfiber cloth or even a microfiber hand polishing pad. Fibre-based pads such as microfiber or wool dramatically increase a compound's cutting ability, and when working by hand to remove deeper scratches such as these, you really need to maximise your cutting ability, as hand polishing is nowhere near as effective as machine polishing. So technique wise, you really need to use a good amount of pressure, and you really need to go to town scrubbing that compound back and forth for several minutes. And if your fingers don't start hurting and you don't start sweating, then you're not doing it right. And after you've worked the door handle well for quite some time, in most cases you'll need to follow up with a foam pad and a lighter polish to remove the haze and restore clarity to the finish of the paint. Now, although this second stage shouldn't take anywhere near as long as the first, you still need to put a bit of work and time into it if you're after a good result. Hopefully you can see that although there are still a couple of tiny deeper scratches remaining, the result was near perfect, and such a dramatic difference. But I'll state once again that hand polishing does require you to work about 10 times harder to achieve the same results that you would achieve by machine. So with all the edge work completed, it's really more of the home stretch doing the flat work, which in my experience takes about half the time to complete. Now being that I'm using a larger pad, I'll be applying slightly more compound to it, but as mentioned before, I'll also be working an area almost twice as large. But apart from that, my technique in relation to pressure, arm movement, and the amount of passes is almost identical. And whereas for the edge work, I had to divide the panel into about 7 or 8 smaller areas, for the flat work, I'll be able to complete the whole car door in just 3 to 4, or about half the amount of areas, yet still be able to achieve the exact same results. So with all the edge and the flat work completed for the first cutting stage, hopefully you can see that I've removed at least 95% of all the existing defects, which is usually my goal. But hopefully you can also see that there is a noticeable amount of haze and a little micro marring and scratches in the finish, which I created during the compounding stage and which I'll hopefully be able to remove during the next polishing stage. Now, to try and help show you guys in the footage what I'm trying to achieve in this second polishing stage, I set up a 50-50 shot to display what the paint looks like just after a single compounding stage compared to how it will look like after the second refinement stage. Hopefully you can see that there is a clear difference with the second stage as it cleans up or removes that layer of compounding haze to reveal a much cleaner, deeper and glossier finish, which is always the ultimate finishing goal. Now in truth, the second polishing stage is fairly similar to the first compounding stage with just a few slight differences. The main difference is that I'm using a finer polish on a more gentle foam pad, and in relation to technique, I'm also using a slightly less aggressive method with a slightly slower machine speed, a touch less pressure and a slightly faster arm movement, while even working just a slightly larger area. The reason for this is that unlike in the first cutting stage where I need to remove quite significant defects, in this second finishing stage I just need to remove very mild compounding haze. So a more gentle combination of my polish, pad and technique will not only be sufficient to remove these minor defects, but it'll also be more successful in amplifying the gloss and clarity of the paint for this final finishing stage. And once again, as long as I stay consistent in my method and technique, I will achieve a uniform result on the entire door. Once all the door is completed, I'll remove the masking tape and give the entire door another panel wipe down to ensure that it's entirely clean and bare of any polishing oils. At which point, it's also ready for me to add my choice of wax, sealant or coating to protect the finish. No paint correction job is ever 100% perfect, but I'd say that at least 98 to 99% of the existing defects were removed during this whole process, and the gloss and clarity levels of the paint are just about as good as new, if not better. So all in all, a fantastic end result, but also a decent amount of work, which really goes to show that you'll get out of every job what you're willing to put in. As always, I really hope you guys enjoyed and found this video useful. Please like, comment and subscribe to this channel to show your support for these videos, and I'll see you guys soon.